have my microphone on. Now, we've done the pledge and opening. Okay. Call to order. Okay, minutes. Item 3. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move the approval of the minutes from the May 13, 2024 meeting.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Okay. Any questions on it? If not, we can vote by acclamation for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, call the public. There isn't much public here. It seems kind of, I'm used to more audience, or is it just whatever?
We need to get some of those cutouts, photo cutouts.
Just as long as they don't look like us. Okay, item 5, consent agenda, A through K. Any motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda items A through K and A through F and H through K, pulling out G for separate discussion.
Okay.
Hold up, which one?
I'll second that.
Is disposal of surplus items.
Okay.
So we have A through K, except for G.
A through F and H through K.
Okay.
A through F, H through K.
You made a motion, right?
I did. I moved.
Yeah, I second the motion.
Okay. Any other things want to be pulled out, or if not, we can vote?
We pulled G out.
I understand that. I asked for another.
Oh, sorry.
Pull something else out. Thank you for checking me.
Forgive me.
If hearing none, let's vote by acclamation. Excuse me, call the question for acclamation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move the approval of item 5G.
G.
Okay,
And I'll second that also.
all right.
Discussion.
Discussion on the
Yeah, it's disposable of assets.
Yep.
And I called and talked to Dr. Wilson earlier this morning because it wasn't really clear what was actually going. It appeared to me that these were usable assets for our programs, and so he clarified that, but would you like to run through that, Dr. Wilson?
I would. Mr. Lane, thank you very much for giving the opportunity for calling me earlier today so we could kind of work our way through it. So our relationship with Apache Junction Unified School District is shifting back to the traditional structure in which they're operating satellite programs. Remember, for the past, I think, 8 years, we've operated their programs for them, and now we're shifting back, so Apache Junction is running its own satellites as our partnering districts do. One of the agreements within the IGA is that any equipment that was purchased with Perkins funding that was allocated to Apache Junction would remain in Apache Junction, because it was the federal funding for that school district. And so the IGA specifically speaks out to the idea that any of the equipment that was purchased through the Perkins funding remains in Apache Junction. One of the things we were very diligent in and on is purchasing probably 99% of the equipment that is out there with Perkins funding. That was done purposefully, A, so that it would remain in Apache Junction should the relationship shift, but also B, it was dollars that weren't necessarily dollars that we could utilize elsewhere within the organization. So what this is doing isn't disposing of the equipment, it is shifting the equipment from being on our registrar, our registration as an asset, and removing it from an asset in EVIT and pushing it over to AJ as an asset. So we're not disposing of it as we would some other products, we're just removing it off our books and then giving it to AJ per the IGA.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was my concern because it's on a disposal, but it was clear to me that these are all current and useful devices.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we vote by acclamation for G.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6, personnel. Dr. Wilson?
Mr. President, members of the governing board, again, standard issues this time of year as we're onboarding and offboarding, and we're also preparing for clinicals and adjuncts. And so all of this is stuff that we go through every single year at this time. I would like to take this moment, though, and really compliment HR for the work that they've done this past year. We are in a much better position today than I think we have been since I've been the superintendent in terms of having staff hired for next year. We talked even about this year being able to bring individuals on early. So an individual that isn't supposed to start until next year, we started them actually on a modified contract at the end of this year to give them a couple weeks to shadow, to learn Canvas, to get themselves acclimated to EVIT so that when they start full, they have a little bit of ground underneath their feet. And so I really compliment HR for the work they're doing to get our faculty and staff hired and transitioned into next year, as well as an onboarding process. One of the things that we talked about earlier this year is when we look at why teachers don't stay in organizations. One of the reasons why they don't stay is because the process of coming from whatever institution and organization they were comfortable with, whether it was public or private, and starting in a public school system oftentimes can be clunky and cannot be very user-friendly. And so with Dr. Doolin, Ms. Perez, Mr. Casaro, Dr. Frimmer, and the directors, they've actually spent this year really crafting and creating a new onboarding process that I think will allow our teachers to have a much more successful onboarding and entrance into our organization. So, Mr. President, there's nothing unique in the personnel item. I just wanted to take a minute and thank HR not only for how proactive they're being in terms of finding qualified candidates, but also implementing the onboarding process that hopefully will give our new teachers a much better experience starting at EVIT than what we've had in years past.
Well, it's good we're getting everything under control. Still, I'm sure there's still several openings.
There are still some openings, yes. We have some MC10 positions available. What else, do you think?
That's all right.
MC10?
You just say there's some open, it's okay.
Technology maintenance. We still have a few open, yes.
Yeah. Do I have a motion on this?
No, Mr.
No,
President, I move the approval of items 6A through C.
Okay.
I'll second.
Anybody have any questions about any of that or
Yeah,
discussion?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
As it relates to item 6C, I assume that this is just, is making it so that we can actually pay these people what the market bears.
Yeah, I'm going to give Dr. Doolin a credit here too, and I don't typically like to do that, but yes. So one of the challenges that we're facing is being competitive and paying adjuncts. And the competitive salary is more like $60 an hour, and we were offering 45. And that's a big step up. And so how would we be able to navigate that? Dr. Doolin was fortunate to receive a donation, you'll see it on the list that you just approved, of $20,000. And that donation is specifically earmarked for health sciences, in particular offsetting the cost of the adjunct instructors. And so it's $60, but 45 comes from the current budget, and then the additional 15 will come from the $20,000 allocation of grant that she received.
So one of the concerns over previous years that I've had, and I trust that you're guarding this, is that I want to reserve to the administration the opportunity to make those special, I mean, there are people that we know that it's very hard to get them on board, and that, so that you're not so constrained by our salary schedules that you can't say, come to the board and say, you know, we got to pay the rate, and it's more than what's in the schedule. Because I mean, diesel mechanics, for example, or you know, whatever, nursing instructors. I mean, those are rare as hen's teeth, and I want to make sure that you feel comfortable that we're continuing to reserve to you that prerogative to bring that to the board and feeling support for that.
Absolutely, you all were very gracious in giving the ability for us to have a hard to fill ability to add, and we've had to use that in a number of positions this year. That's partly why we've been able to be as proactive and successful in our staffing. So absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson, how long do you anticipate that 20,000 grant to last?
Couple of years.
Quite a while. When we're only using $15, you know, to make the difference an hour, it will last us, I'm hoping, for a couple years. paying those adjuncts. Because again, this is just for our adjunct pay, so it's just for the clinical portions that aren't picked up by our full-time employees.
Thank you.
And one of the things that we're experiencing, we've talked about this before, is that, as we continue to evolve and grow as an organization, some of what we're leaning into is new to us as an organization. And I think that on the front end, having the resources, and Mr. Hobson, your point is very well taken, having the resources on the front end to do what we need to do to begin building the organization is a much needed asset. The belief and hope is that as we build the organization, money then isn't the sole driver, that individuals will want to be part or want to stay part of the organization, even though we might not be able to be as competitive as the private sector. But we can't say, come work here because it's a great place, you're going to have the best career, when they haven't experienced it yet and we haven't built it yet. So, it will last several years, but at the same time, during that several years, our belief is as we begin growing out our programming, whether it's the traditional programs we offer, whether it's the associates, whether it's apprenticeships, that we'll begin creating a narrative of within our community that this is a place people want to come work, whether we're able to pay the exact price that they would want to get paid.
I just want to add something because I think it would be amiss if I didn't. NAFCARE is the one who donated that money to the RN and LPN program, and they also donated, they have become one of our clinical partners and are accepting all our students to their institutions for clinical. So it really was a great partnership for EVIT.
Bonus.
Nice.
Thank you.
Discussion's over with, and we have a motion.
We
Have
do.
a motion and second.
Okay. Can we vote, can we call for the question, acclamation?
Yes, sir. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we're on information discussion. We get to turn to our left on the stage. And-
Before, Mr. President, may I ask a question
Yes.
before you go here? So there's a possibility that I may need to pull the Chapter 7 tuition and fee funds. I won't until we start having the conversation, but I should have taken a deeper look at that, and I didn't. So I apologize for that. So, sorry, no.
So what's that, is that 8B?
No,
Item 7.
7A,
Sorry.
Chapter 7.
Sorry.
So are you pulling that, Ms. Dr. Wilson?
So the question becomes on there, is that the student withdraws within 10 calendar days of the start of the course semester. Is that on the high school or is that all students?
Is tuition-paying students,
So it'd be adult.
correct? And when I suppose the high school students are paying tuition as well.
So I think we have some of our programs that are less than 10 days. And so I should have seen that before, and I apologize. So I don't know if we want to amend it now or just bring it back.
It's entirely up to, these are not changes I recommended. These are changes came from the business office.
Oh. Oh, that plot thickens.
But that's a summer course. Right, it doesn't matter, it still says, it's still going to be, it's.
Can we hear what you're saying?
Semester.
Come on.
They're trying,
Put
yeah,
out.
they're trying, no, it's just gonna.
Maybe we don't
Well-
want to hear.
It's
This is
a
awkward.
it's a first read anyway.
Right.
So I think this is what this is for, right?
We can
But-
read it and give feedback.
Adjust it and come back,
Yeah,
okay.
Now you say that, it's correct. We can fix all the changes that we need to fix right now and bring it back for the second read on schedule.
Okay, outstanding.
So you're allowed to amend things between the first and second read?
Correct. That's the
Okay.
purpose of the first read, to make corrections. So what are the corrections that are needed, Dr. Wilson?
We'll talk about that offline. We can talk about it.
Well, if we're gonna
Talk about 'em here.
So, Mike-
do it tonight, we gotta do it now.
Yeah, so I don't know what it is that you're in need of, but if we have a lash course that's like 10 days long. Yeah.
Right, so we have some courses that are not, that's what I was pointing out, is we have some courses that run during the semester, they run during the summer semester in our adult program, that are just about 10 days long. We just started our eyelash course, and I believe it's only 10 days? 5 days? Yeah, it's only 5 days long, so we would be refunding all their tuition, so we've got to amend that.
Okay.
So can we,
We're not
There's
voting
no
yet.
approval, it's just
First
discussion.
read. It's a policy.
Yeah, we could make it a percentage of the course, which would be my recommendation.
Okay, so that's a suggestion for the change for next week's read. Kevin?
sorry, I'm trying to figure out what I need to do to amend this right now.
Do you have to amend it right now, or just take in the information?
Well, if we come back with a completely different one, it would be different, would be a new first read if we don't make the recommended changes right now.
Okay.
So how about, I mean, we don't need this till July, we can do
Okay,
a
I'm
first
going
read.
to go, while you're working on that, I'm going to go to item 8, and then we'll come back to it.
Well, you want to just skip this one and bring it back to the next
Yeah,
meeting?
we'll just skip this
We'll
one, we'll
just
table
withdraw-
this.
We'll withdraw this.
And we'll bring it back for the first read in 2 weeks.
It's just discussion, there's no table.
Right. Okay, so then we have 2 new policies then. One is for the district mascot, and the second is for the
Yes.
staff contracts and compensation for the superintendent's cabinet, which I believe you all discussed in executive session at the last meeting.
So, Mr. President, Dr. Wilson, I have a question. What's the matter with Great Pyrenees? I mean, I'm a good fan.
That's actually a fair question. That's actually a fair
No,
question.
I've met the creature. He's wonderful.
Yes, yes. The creature,
I think there's a creature here in the board, too.
yes.
The mascot.
Okay. Are we done with 7, or we're still,
I believe we're done with 7 then.
we're done with 7? Okay, we're done with 7, it'll have a read next
Do you
week.
want Dr. Wilson to explain the policies or no?
Anything, I'll do whatever you would like.
What, the policies?
Would you like me to explain both?
The refund fees?
The third. The contracts and compensation
chapter
one.
2 and chapter
Yeah.
5, I don't-
I would.
I
Sure.
would,
Please, thank you.
So there's 2. So the first policy is a district mascot. So one of the things that is incredibly interesting to me is there was a short window of time in which, on a personal level, I was in need of bringing my dog to work. And so I was only anticipating doing it for a couple of days, and the reason why behind it doesn't matter. But the bathroom, I could just put him there, and it was gonna alleviate a ton of agita for me. And so I did that, and was never intending it to be anything other than just that. And I felt that it was a short gap, and it was, well, what became very interesting to me is how much individuals enjoyed the dog.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was just, it never occurred to me. And so then we began the discussion of, well, why is it that we then don't have a mascot? Why is it that we don't have the ability to have something that is uniquely different, that would be EVIT, that would benefit not only our students but our staff? And so we began the process of looking at, well, what would that look like? What would that, how could that look? And the recommendation is to have a district-wide mascot, in which we would have one at the main campus and one at the Power campus. The mascot would be a Bernese Mountain Dog. Both students' stores, student lounges that will be here at the main campus to begin with, but eventually when we go back out to Power, we'll build the second, will be called the Mountain Dog Cafe. And the idea behind it is that it isn't, even though the dog might be my dog or might be somebody else's dog, it's actually the school's dog, not in reality, but in daily purpose. And the amount of times in which, I've been taking my dog back to the car, and I would have a student or a group of students that would love to come up and interact with my dog, the photography group to love and come, staff that have come and said, hey, I've had a really long day, can I just have 5 minutes has just been amazing to me. And so, as we talked about why not doing something like that, that maybe isn't as out there as what people might think it to be, because I think today's society is a bit different than what used to be, but EVIT is a uniquely different place, and that's something I think that we should embrace. And the idea of having a mascot that is available to our students and to our staff, the idea that, and you see in the policy that it's, the dogs are going to be well-trained, and that there's some parameters and some stipulations around it. It just made sense to try to create something that we believe would be beneficial to students, to staff, but also something that we have as an institution that is uniquely different than what you get in most public institutions. And so that's the mascot policy of first read. The staff contracts and compensation. One of the things that I'm proud of as the superintendent, but I think it's also at times also a bit challenging, is the rate in which we're growing and the directions in which we're growing. I don't want to belabor the point, but when I became superintendent, we had roughly 3,500 high school students, and we were servicing maybe another 500, and that might be generous, adults in adult certification programs. We are significantly above that number even this year, and we'll be even more so next year. Our adult certification programs are going to continue to grow, but so are our associate programs. We received notification from COE today on approval to begin our registered nursing program. And so we're expecting to start the RN program at the end of August. We already have surgical tech associates that's underway. We have the apprenticeship, in which we know that there's a need for that space within the industry. So when we start looking at where we're at and where we're growing, the cabinet has responsibilities that are being placed upon them that are outside the scope of what their job was when they were hired, right? And Edith is sitting to my left. I mean, when Ms. Perez was hired as a CFO, the CFO was for a high school ran and some adult education programming, but didn't include the certificate, number of adult certification programs we have, nor did it include the associates, nor did it include the apprenticeships. And so on the CFO side, her scope has significantly expanded beyond what she was hired for. And so as the superintendent, my belief is that either their base needs to reflect that expansion, or there needs to be another mechanism that would compensate them for the expanded work that isn't just a base increase, right? And that to me is a performance metrics for them. And so what is in front of you is a policy that would afford the cabinet to have an opportunity to have a performance plan that is worked on with me, and then I bring to you the goals and whether the individuals met the goals and what the recommended performance plan percentage should be. Now, it can't exceed the total dollars available would be up to 10% amongst the cabinet of the net in adult education. And so it's not driven by the high school side, because the high school side is part of what they were hired for. And it's the net, so we've paid all of our bills, and we've making sure that we're being good stewards. But whatever is netted in adult education, then there would be 10% that you all release so that the individuals in the cabinet would have access to performance. Obviously, 5 members in the cabinet, the possibility that each individual would get 2% gets you to the 10, right? But there's also a possibility that one year Ms. Perez could get 3% because she's done an amazing job in the CFO category as we've grown the associates, and Dr. Doolin gets 1%. Because even though we built some things out, there were some stumbles along the way. So the total aggregate would not exceed the 10%, but it's not guaranteed that each individual would get the same percentage as the other. It's going to be driven by the goals that were set and their ability to successfully navigate and accomplish the goals.
I have a couple questions, Mr. President. First one, in terms of the dog, which is very exciting, or dogs, I suppose. Our insurance is good with dogs? Okay, I figured on account of the vet programs, but wanted to double check. And then in terms of the proposed cabinet performance pay, I guess a couple questions from my end. One is that given the fixed amount of any potential pool, do we foresee that would hinder cooperation between cabinet members, since we're all going for the same amount, which is inflexible? And so if somebody overperforms by necessity, that would detract from others' potential compensation. What are the thoughts around that?
So I think that's a concern that we've actually talked about. I think that the other side to that is it potential that because they're all beholden in some way or another to each other, to have the performance number grow, right? Because remember, it's 10% on the net. Right now, I think the net in the adult education is $50,000. So in order for their dollars to grow, we've got to grow adult education. So the counter to that is that they are beholden to one another to grow the total number, the total dollars available, even though the percentage is still capped at the 10%. And so the conversations we've had, that it's actually just the opposite, that it actually will motivate others to work with one another in order to have the system be more efficient and effective so that the actual net is larger than what it currently is.
Cool, thank you. And then lastly, given that this is solely focused on adult ed, what if any impact, and I guess assuming adoption, how will we monitor impact on the, secondary programs, existing programs?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So one of the things that, and part of the reason why I'm not part of that is because my job is for the totality of the system, right? So part of my performance is rooted not just in the adult or the high school, but the whole of it. So part of my job is to maintain and make sure that our high school isn't losing traction because we're focusing on the adult ed at the expense of the high school. I will be honest, one of the challenges will be is that the success that we're currently having on the high school side will not be sustainable forever. And so we'll have to have some discussions on what's a fair growth on the high school side. And I don't know that right now we can determine what a fair growth is because we're growing at an accelerated rate. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, I think we will come back on the high school side once the dust settles and say, so what's a fair growth rate for high school? Then that
Sure.
becomes part of my job, part of my performance to the governing board to maintain that system, both the high school and the adult, effectively, which means that then I would turn to Ms. Perez or Dr. Doolin or Dr. Schreiner or Mr. Kelbel and say, we've got to do better on the high school side. What are our recruiters doing? What kind of programming are we offering? Can we get more two-year courses into single-year courses so we can have more students that can come on? Mm-hmm. Are we able to add courses here or delete courses here because they're not being profitable to our students and it's not beneficial to the students? Those are the things that we have been doing on the high school side for the past 3 years that we will continue to do, because as much as I am talking most recently about the adult side, our foundation is built on the high school side. We are first and foremost servicing our high school students because that's the workforce that we have a captive audience in. And I would not want to rob Peter to pay Paul, but I do think at some point we'll have to have what is a reasonable growth expectation on the high school side. And I just don't think we're there right now because of the accelerated growth that we're having.
Sure, thank you. And one last comment, and then I'll stop talking, is when we talk about growth on the high school side, I want to be inclusive of not just, and I know we all know this, but not just on enrollment, but also, moving towards quality metrics, which
100%.
we all know is super important, but wanted to
100%.
clarify for the record.
100%.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is that the number of students enrolled in CTE programs, not just at the central, but also the satellite, isn't what moves the needle. It's those students completing the sequence, passing the TSA, getting industry certification, and getting placed. That's what moves the needle, right? Now, all of it together is what makes the system work, but to your point, Mr. Boyle, the latter part of that equation is actually the more important, to be honest.
No, for sure. I have a question, Mr. President, if I may.
Please.
In our policy, is it listed anywhere who the 5 cabinet members are? And if not, could that be listed in our policy, just so it's crystal clear? Is it? Well, then that's the part that I'm not looking at, sorry. See, I've already said I've designated myself the asker of all stupid questions, so we've got
I
that out of the way.
think it lists the position.
It's,
The
no,
five.
I don't want names, that's what I
Yeah,
meant,
yeah,
positions,
yeah.
yes. No, it's here, I had scrolled past it, my bad. And then, okay, so here's more dumb questions. So you'd said it's about 50,000, that's about the net. Is that what you had said, give or take?
Give or take.
What does that money do? Does it just sit there? Is it earmarked for other things? Tell me, once that's gone, there's a vacuum. What is that being saved for? Walk me through that, please.
I think I can take a stab at it, but I'm going to turn to the CFO who's.
Good evening. Any of the money that's left over, it is carried forward into the new year so that we can implement any equipment replacement, any additional staffing needs, anything that's associated with running the adult education programs more effectively. But it is money that gets rolled over year after year.
I think that's how we pay for our buildings and stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Good.
It is something to think about. Okay.
You're done with your question?
I am, sorry, now I'm talking to myself.
Any-
It's a red letter
Anyone
day.
else discuss this? Discussing item? Do we need to come back to you, Kevin, or?
I think Mr. Hobson.
I have a question.
Yes.
And a couple comments. I'm pleased that this was made clear that this is in lieu of, or this is not in lieu of regular increases, so this has not become the mechanism by which we compensate.
Mr. Hobson, can you turn your microphone on?
Sorry.
And I forgot what I said. No, I'm pleased, that's really common. I'm pleased that this is not this is in addition to and not in lieu of the regular increases in the base pay, so I think that needs to be clear. And your smart lawyer is going to correct me here, but I think the cabinet actually includes the superintendent. So this is, and Amber pointed this out, this is a definitional section of what the cabinet is. And so when you say the superintendent's cabinet consists of the following, and you don't include the superintendent, that's kind of awkward. I think it has to include the superintendent, and I think you just have to make clear a little later in the policy that the superintendent gets to decide and recommend to the board, but he's not recommending his own.
Correct, he or she's not a part of the
Yeah.
compensation plan.
And I would stand corrected about that, by the way, because he's a smart guy, but I just.
Is there already a policy for the superintendents?
So
In there.
there's a state statute that requires the superintendent to have a portion of his or her contract be performance. So that's inherent in all contracts, and I'm assuming policies. And so that is where the superintendents will stay. To your point, Mr. Hobson, maybe clarifying that even though the superintendent is part of the cabinet, this performance is specifically for.
Other than the
Yeah.
superintendent, right.
This, people just right under the superintendent that are important. All people
This
are
is just
important.
this is just first read, right?
I'm sorry?
We're just first read.
Correct, yeah.
So,
Well, and I think one of the things that you as a governing board, not just you, but those that came before you, and I hope those that continue on after you, have been very supportive of across the organization, is looking at mechanisms in which performance can be value added to the individual employees. Our certified staff has, by statute, the 301 performance plan. You all have been wonderfully gracious to have the classified staff participate in our placement opportunity. You've been great in saying that the statute doesn't speak specifically to our adult education instructors, but you've allowed them to participate in a portion of the performance plan. And so throughout the whole of the system, looking at ways that, to your point, Mr. Hobson, we compensate for the work done, but we incentivize through performance as long as there's some measurable goals and as long as it's something that's actually moving the organization in a positive direction, I think makes sense across the system.
I like this, sorry.
Okay. If that's all the discussion items we have, we'll go on to item 8, budget proposal. We have Edith, you're on.
Just waiting for the monitors.
We can see them.
I was going to pull it up on my phone. Just to give you a quick timeline of what you're looking at today. Today is the budget proposal. It is required by state statute that you approve the proposal. Following today's meeting, we will post this. We will submit to the State Department of Education, and we will post it on our website. We are required to have the budget posted for 10 days for the public. Then when we come back on June 24th for you to adopt the budget, we will have a hearing prior to the actual meeting. So those are statutory requirements. Given that the information, that the budget, state budget has not been finalized yet, this budget is based on current data that we have. Therefore, we may have to come back in September and revise it once the new funding formula has been released. And again, this is if mandated by the state. I know that a couple of years ago, we did have to come back in September and make that revision. Then in October is when you will be reviewing and approving the annual financial report for the fiscal year that's ending on June 30th. Then in December, again, it all depends on whether or not we're mandated to do another budget revision. Then in May, that is the one budget revision that you just approved, like for the current fiscal year you just recently approved. That is one budget revision that it's mandated on an annual basis. So as I mentioned, current data is what we're using. As far as ADM, although we are expecting a growth on our central campuses, we don't know what to anticipate as far as our satellite campuses, and our overall ADM for the district does include those numbers. So at this point, the budget that is being proposed includes a 0 ADM increase for fiscal year 25. It also reflects the 6% increases that you approved for certified staff, as well as the 4% for classified and administration. Also includes the average teacher salary information that were required by the state, and I'm just giving you the difference in the calculation. And just so that you know, as Dr. Wilson was talking about, all the additional compensation performance based on that is not included in this particular calculation. The budget funding formula, base level amount based, we calculate that times our current expected ADM, gives us our base level amount of that 60 million. We obviously add to budget capacity the audit amount that we have to pay on an annual basis. The district additional assistance, which is basically the additional dollars that we get for capital, which is the 6.4, gives us the equalization base of a little bit under 67 million. Just to clarify this, that 67 includes the pass-through dollars that we sent over to our satellites. Another way to look at this, the equalization base is the 67 of it. It's 14 million that comes from that tax levy. The remaining comes from the county and state equalization. Projected M&O expenditures. This is just basically the breakdown. As you can see, the largest number is in our satellite payments, and the other salaries, benefits, other purchase services, the supplies, but then primarily the larger does come into the other section, which is the pass-through to our satellites based on our current IGA. Classroom Site Fund, this is the projected revenue that we're expecting. Now, the Classroom Site Fund is a set amount based on prior year enrollment, so this number will not change provided that our ADM doesn't necessarily change. And we are looking through some of our data reporting, so provided that nothing changes, this amount will stay consistent. At least the rate will not change. Our unrestricted capital, this is our capital expenditure allocation that we have for the new year. This includes anything from equipment, building repairs, technology related, any renovation and construction. So that's currently the funding that we have in the budget. Federal and state projects, we have 2.9 million in federal, which includes the Perkins, E-rate Pell grants, and then a recently awarded for the adult education grant. State projects include priority instructional improvement, two new ones that we were recently approved for, which is the innovative, the professional development, and then also the additional funds that we have remaining in the CT industry certification grant from prior years. Then all of the other funds, which include the adult education plan, civic, auxiliary tax credits, all of the remaining funds are in the 10.4 million. That pretty much wraps it up. I'm hopeful that if before the next budget meeting we have additional information, I'll be able to provide that. If not, it'll be in the budget revision once that becomes available.
I have a question. I just want to clarify, on the first page of the material that we have is average teacher salaries. Now, is that just considered the ones that are on the EVIT campus and has nothing to do with satellite teacher salaries?
That is correct.
Thank you.
May I ask a question? Ms. Perez, could I get a copy of these slides,
Absolutely.
please? Thank you.
You're on.
No, no.
Mr. President, Ms. Perez, I want to ask a really stupid question, my forte. And I think it's clear from your slide, but you would consider this a conservative budget, yes?
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question too? On
thought you were asking
average,
for the question.
what is the 301, would you guess, on average, a staff member gets?
A staff member gets on the performance side, it is about $8,000 that they're getting. I mean, they're obviously, depending upon when they enrolled, it could be less. And what I mean by enrolled is when they start, because the plan does allow for proration, but I would say about on average, it's about $8,000 for the performance. Then you add another $5,000 to $6,000 on the certification and placement.
As an average?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that 13, making it up, is a conservative, on average, performance for an instructor?
Yes.
And the average salary next year is 67?
69.
69. Oh, 69. So 69 and 13, I'm not a math giant. What is it? 92. So on average, 82?
83.
83. So on average, about 83,000 in compensation for 10 months. Yeah.
Correct.
Well done, board.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Or is this just discussion? I don't think it's discussion.
I'll move that we adopt the proposed budget.
Second.
Hearing no one to be talking about it any longer, we'll have the question by acclamation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we're on to 8B, tuition revision for adult ed, emergency medical technician, and adult ed Cosmo extra hours. That will
Mr.
be,
President, I move the adoption of item 8B in the agenda.
I'll second.
okay, Dr. Wilson.
Is this a you or?
Oh, Doolin. No, it says Wilson on my paper.
I know, so Ms. Perez?
On the tuition revisions, we have, the first one is the EMT, and this is just to be consistent with, one, to cover our expenses, and also to be consistent with the other institutions around the valley that do charge similar, that do offer the similar programs. As far as the adult ed extra hours for the cosmetology, that was just to be also consistent with the high school extra hours compensation. There was in the past, we would take the average, but this is just to be consistent in the program offerings and blocks of 25 at the rate of $10 an hour.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
8C, vet clinic price schedule.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt item 8C in the agenda, approve item 8G in the agenda. 8C, excuse me.
8C.
8C.
I will second that.
Okay.
Someone else wanna do it?
We have a motion. Any discussion?
Mr. President, members of the governing board, this is just the fee schedule that we plan to charge for our, I believe it's our grooming program
And
and
vet.
vet program. So we need your authorization to charge those dollars.
EVIT staff gets a good deal. There should be not a roll on there for board members. Just kidding. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for the question.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I go there. Okay, I'm on to D, additional industry certifications, there's a bunch of them. Most of these we've already approved, you just have the addition of a few of them in there?
Correct.
Okay. Have a motion?
I'll move that we adopt item 8D, additional industry certifications.
Second.
Oh, I think we got a second down here at the other end. Our quiet member. Okay, got a first and a second? Which ones are new?
Would you like me to answer that? It's not that all of them are new. I believe during the first time that we presented this, we were missing a couple of the certifications, so we needed to bring the full list back to you. So this is the full list of all the certifications that were offered this last year, of all the new ones that were.
Okay, some were omitted, so we need to correct that.
That's correct.
Is that it? Okay.
I have a question. They have on the last column, credential approved status, you got an ADA approved and then industry relevant. And tell me what that difference means.
You want me to hit
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
too? So some of them are ADE approved, they're on the ADE credentialing list and on the approved certification, and there are some certifications that are not on there that we do in addition that are not on the ADE approved list, but yet are relevant within the industry. Some of those would be under our LOPE programs, such as what we're doing in the apprenticeship. There's not that certification on ADE's website. They have pre-apprenticeship, they don't have apprenticeship. Same goes with like EMT, I think in fire science, there's some additional certifications that we offer here that are not on ADE list, but because we have them a little bit longer, we add those other value-added certifications. There is a process that they have to go through to get that approved, and some of these you will see, and you'll see in the quality indicator, will be changing for the next year.
How does this affect the satellite programs? Or does it?
This piece
This
doesn't
does not.
affect the satellite programs.
This is just
This
for
is
EVIT
just
Central.
EVIT Central.
For EVIT's use only, okay.
Hearing no more discussion, I'll call for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, quality monitoring, I believe this is Dr. Doolin.
I'll start.
Okay.
So one of the things that we've been doing, Dr. Doolin has been doing really well this past year is meeting with our sending district CT directors to take a look at how we can help them and they can help us grow the outcome expectation for the organization. You remember there's been discussion about the IGA and the requirements in the IGA to be considered a CTE program. This is not that. This is in addition to that, and this is designed through the collaboration of our CTE directors to begin giving us indicators that we all can use in order to help better the outcomes, not only of the central but the satellite campus. And I'll let Dr. Doolin explain what she's done because I know it has been a labor-intensive process.
Good evening. I believe you have all seen this many times before, so I don't want to belabor the point because I think we've been over everything on here. So I would happily entertain questions if you have any additional questions. But this is the work that we've been doing with the CTE directors all year and coming up with a plan or a measurement that we can start with for this next year. One of the changes that I will bring to your attention is we put in some time frames so that we made sure that it was very clear, and that was like under program retention, that when we would share the data when it would be provided to the districts, and then also when we would present that data to all of you on the governing board. We wanted to make sure that was very transparent so that all the CTE directors, as well as the superintendents and other districts, partnering districts, knew when that was gonna happen. So that was some of the clarifying information that went in there. And then the last one is on the placement. We track placement every year. That's one of the ADE requirements. We're taking it a step further, and we're really looking at, is the placement related to, is there employment related to the placement? So yes, we're still tracking college, military, all of that, but what we're really asking them to look at for this quality indicator is the placement related to their industry certification that they received? And the goal is that 30% of the overall placement would be placed in the industry that they received a certification in. Those are the big changes from previous reads.
So back to one of the questions, Mr. Boyle, you asked earlier on is, when we start talking on the high school side, how do we make sure that we continue to grow not only the numbers, but outcomes? And so part of what we've done this year is to build the capacity, because what we're applying to the satellites, we're applying to ourselves. So, how many of our programs are placing students in industry? Because that matters. And so this is an example of how we're going to continue to monitor on the high school side outcomes, not only in numbers of students, but quality of programming.
My question is, on your placement, it says greater than 30% of their students, so that 50% is 50% of 30%? So it'll be 15% of the students are...
That should be, I want to make a clarification. Underneath that employment, it should say 30%. It should match. That is an error on my part.
Okay,
Thank you for catching that.
you're welcome.
They should both be 30%. We started at 50, but then it was deemed that was a little
Hi.
high. We were aiming really high. We wanted to aim there, but then we thought we needed to come back until we get the information and the data. We brought it down to 30%.
And then we can raise that in the future.
Absolutely, we can raise it in the future after we gather some data on it.
Okay.
Okay, it'll take a couple of years to do that. Do we have a motion on this?
We don't have one yet.
I don't think we have a motion yet.
Yeah, Mr. President, I move that we approve the item 8E, the quality monitoring tool that we've just been discussing.
I second.
Second?
And one further question, if I might. Mr.
Yes, you may.
Is this the same evaluation that the other campuses are, we're going to comply with the same thing that everyone else is doing?
Yeah, that's both internal and external.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Thank you.
And I'll be honest with you, some of the bigger, do what? What?
Yes, we're going to apply internal as well as external, and we are going to have some of our programs that need to improve.
And the one I was particularly interested in is the familiarization obligation with respect to the IGA participants. So we're going to expect them to permit us to engage in that.
Now, you work with all the other CTE directors on this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they know what it is, just for your benefit. Okay, hearing no more discussion. A question?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, motion for executive session, item 9.
I'll make a motion that we enter into executive session.
I'll second.
I'll ask for the question.
All
Go ahead.
all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay.
time there, Tammy? Past my bedtime? Okay. It's past my bedtime is what I was saying. Okay, we're on action item 10, possible action regarding performance bonus for superintendent. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we go with a 20% performance bonus for Dr. Wilson.
Second.
Got a first and second? We've discussed it enough. Call for the question.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Item 10B, possible action regarding performance bonus for chief academic officer. Do I have a
Mr. President,
motion? Go ahead.
Mr. President, I move that we go with the 10% performance bonus for Dr. Doolin.
Second.
First and second. Call for the question. Acclamation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Perez, do you have any concern about whether or not these are budget busters at all, these performance bonuses that we've just settled on?
No concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Late question on it, but
I meant to ask earlier, but I just want to be on the record because this is important.
okay.
And yeah, thank you.
I would say, and including the percentage increase of the cabinet as well. Okay, just as long as that's on the record, thank you.
Okay. I assume that's for both of them. Okay, superintendent's summary of current events. 3 hours you have.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, first I just want to say thank you, and I oftentimes I know come across as being a blowhard and incredibly wordy, but it is truly a pleasure to be here and to work with and for you, so thank you. Current events, summertime on the modified calendar just goes by really fast. So next week, I believe it's next week, have Fee Day. And Dr. Schreiner has been working around the clock to make sure that our Fee Day is far more efficient and effective than it was last year. And I think the way she's structuring it in the culinary building, scheduling programs to have days instead of people just coming whenever they want, is going to go a long way in helping us to be much more efficient and effective. But next week is Fee Week. We have new teachers coming back. July 8th. I was going to say July 8th. Yeah, so I mean, 3 weeks after our Fee Week is we have new teachers, and then we have returning teachers, and then school starts on the 24th of July. In between there is the CTE conference in Tucson, and so there's just quite a bit. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, well, so what are you doing during your summers? How do you and I guess when I first started teaching, summers seemed to feel much longer than they are now, because there really isn't a whole lot of time between when we really shut down and really start up. So there's quite a bit that's happening. As you know, we are still under construction, and the construction meetings for both Hope Tech as well as the main campus renovations continue. This is a time for them to try to really make hay when students aren't here, and so those don't slow down. We know that our technology department is continuing to look for ways in which they can grow. We know as we get more students that causes us to need more back end and bandwidth and devices, and so having 3-5 year plans that allow us to begin allocating and dollars towards the development of those. Our facilities crew, I don't know if you guys saw it when you came in, but this main campus is beautiful. It's just beautiful, but it requires a gosh darn lot of upkeep. And so if you look at all of our palm trees, every single summer, they get the big crane and they go and they trim all the palm trees. And as silly as that sounds, that needs to be done, and it just takes time, and it's done during the summer months. So there aren't necessarily any overarching specific calendar of events, other than that summer is a time in which it's busy, and before we know it, we're going to have new teachers back on our campus, and the school year is going to start.
Just so I have more time.
You know what? Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Doug.
I didn't use my 3 hours.
Doggone it. Okay, we were supposed to stay here till tomorrow. Okay. Calendar. We have a meeting on the 24th. And anything to add to the calendar?
I don't believe so, Mr. President.
Okay. One thing I'd like to see in the future is we're opening up this Hope thing on the 15th, I think, for them to come in.
July 15th to move in.
July 15th. Sometime after that, I think it would be nice, we went out there and greeted all of them and welcomed them and stuff like that.
Sure,
Any
maybe-
board member that wants to at a certain time, but
Maybe
not
we'll-
on the day on move-in.
No, maybe we wait till it's a titch cooler, and then we have one of our meals, pre-board meeting there, and have them have dinner with us, those that are interested, the students that are living there, something like that.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
Okay, calendar's over with. No, Mr. Hobson, you sure you don't want to add anything?
Well, now that you mention it.
Okay, I go to item B, adjournment by acclamation.
I move that we adjourn. But we need to move.
I second.
Thank you.
Second. The question is?
All in favor of adjourning?
Yeah.
Aye.
Any opposed?